Call the meeting of the FM Diversion Authority Board to order. We'll take the roll, please.
Mr. Vaniel?
Here.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Dr. Mahoney? Mr. Pepcorn? Mr. Grinberg?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Whalen?
Here.
Ms. Williams? Here. Ms. Otto? Mr. Hendrickson?
Here.
Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Olson?
Here.
Item number 2, you have the minutes from last meeting before you.
I move approval. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. You have the order of agenda before you. Any changes?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. EMC, is that Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick update, this meeting on budget. No surprises here. This is this is the program budget and just showing an update through 30 November on our actuals. These are the cost categories that we've agreed to track. We've been over this with Finance Committee yesterday in much further detail, but again, we're about $334 million into the $2.2 billion that we have programmed, that we have estimated for this program to date. So again, no surprises here, just an update on the actuals through November. Our cash budget for 2016, as we're nearing the end of this, we're showing that we're going to be somewhere around a $73 million of unspent 2016 budget. As you can see, a lot of that was in land acquisition and construction this past year, much of that due to the injunction, some other things that slowed us down. So we're going into 2017 with quite a bit of unspent from 2016. And in January, we'll come back with a complete and detailed update of the final numbers for 2016. And then just to look ahead, this is what we'll be reporting on the 2017 cash budget going forward with our first report in January. As you can see, our $241 million was approved by this body at our last meeting. And again, they're in your packet for your information, and this is what we'll be reporting on going forward. So, are there any questions there?
No questions.
Okay, if not, I believe Terry is here from the Corps, and she's going to give you an update.
Carrie, we haven't seen you for a while.
Been really busy.
What's the Corps been up to?
We've been really busy, so I'd like to direct your attention to the handout. Number 1, as you all know, we awarded the diversion inlet structure on December 6th for about $46 million to Ames Construction out of Burnsville, Minnesota. Currently, we anticipate a pre-construction conference to be held in early to mid-January. And groundbreaking ceremony, we'll start planning for that for the spring. And I know General Semonite was very interested in being present for that, so we'll work around his schedule. Number 2 on the handout is the wild rice control structure. We're almost done with our preliminary design report. It's about a 35% design that will be available for sponsor review on the 3rd of January. And the goal is to have that design ready to have a construction award in 2018. Number 3 on the list is the southern embankment design. We have a design team currently working on the design for the entire southern embankment to include the overflow spillway in North Dakota and the embankment in North Dakota all the way through Minnesota. And we'll have a 35% design ready for that by the end of our fiscal year 2017. Permitting, yesterday the Omaha District Regulatory issued a 404 permit for construction of the diversion channel by the non-federal sponsors using a P3 contract. That was a big effort and kind of a big milestone for the project. Going to jump down to number 8. We are ready or getting ready to perform biotic and geomorphology surveys starting in the spring of 2017. It requires a lot of parcels, access to a lot of parcels. A lot of those parcels are off alignment, so people I'm sure will wonder why we need access, but it's to do pre-construction baselines for the biotic environment and then geomorphology, or the slumping of streams, like on Wolverton Creek, Rush, the Lower Rush, the Maple, the Cheyenne, the Red, and the Wild Rice. All of them will be doing surveys on all of the rivers and the tribs. And then number 9 for outreach. As most of you know, on the 2nd of December, we held a teleconference for the congressional delegation members to go over the status of the project and to brief them that we were really close to awarding the inlet control structure. And all of the offices were represented at that meeting. That's the end of my update. Are there any questions?
Well, first of all, thank you. Quite a number of milestones achieved since you were last here, with the award of the bid and, of course, the 404 permit and all of that. So certainly doing your work, and we appreciate that very much. Any questions for Terry? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Let's see. Yep, go ahead, John.
Did we have another one? I think there's something in here, yeah. That's not mine. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Diversion Authority Board. We have another historic milestone today for the Diversion Authority. As you may recall, at the beginning of the year, once we obtained federal appropriations for the project, one of the goals was to issue an RFP for the diversion channel and the associated infrastructure. I'm happy to report that we are ready to issue the RFP to the 4 shortlisted teams. By a little bit of background, you'll recall that the Diversion Authority previously shortlisted 4 consortiums back in October 13th, 2016 of this year. The RFP will be distributed to those 4 shortlisted teams. You'll also recall that at the last meeting I went over the schedule for next year with respect to the one-on-ones with each of the 4 teams and the further refinement and final development of the RFP that would be bid against by the teams in June and July of next year. The RFP consists of 3 major documents: the ITP, the RFP, and the project agreement. In total, there are well over 350 pages. I keep a pocket version of them just so that if you have any questions, I can respond to them. The instructions to proposers, I included an executive overview of each of the documents within the board packet. The ITP is the instructions to the proposers. That includes how they're supposed to structure their proposal, communications protocols, conflicts, other items that are related to the normal procurement, how they propose changes to the TRs, many different elements of just putting their bid proposal together and working through the process. The TRs are the technical requirements. They're known as performance specifications or performance standards in the industry. They really set the standard for the design of the different structures within the diversion channel and the diversion channel itself. They are really form the foundation of the whole document process. They're very similar to a design build where you have specifications, but they are more of an output performance spec in that they say draft or build a diversion channel that'll carry this much cubic feet per second with this degree of safety factor, et cetera, et cetera. And that process then directs the design engineers for each of the teams to start putting together their proposal for the channel. The project agreement is the legal agreement between the Diversion Authority and the developer, and that is what obligates them to construct the diversion channel. One of the unique aspects of P3 that is a little different than many of the contracts that you're used to is that instead of liquidated damages, it includes non-compliance points. As you may recall, we'll have a series of milestone payments that'll be due in 2019 and 2020. There is a regime created within the project agreement that requires the developer to fulfill certain obligations, file certain reports, complete certain projects, such as in making sure the grass is seeded at appropriate time, making sure the bridge structures are completed to a certain specification. If they fail to reach those, they're given non-compliance points over a period of time. And each non-compliance point equals a total value. So for example, a non-compliance point might equal $10,000. When you pay out your milestone payment, you deduct off the non-compliance points from the milestone payment. So it's a way to enforce compliance with the contract that actually has a linkage between the event of non-compliance and a deduction in the amount of payment. So it's a really nice way to enforce contractor compliance with the contract documents. The resolution that you have before you is a resolution authorizing the release of the RFP to the 4 shortlisted teams. I can certainly answer any questions that you might have about the resolution or the RFP. Given the length of the RFP, I did not include it in the packet. If you are interested in looking at it, we can certainly get a copy to you for your reading. I would note that each of the member entities will have local engineering or technical person at the one-on-ones, and they will also be able to read and review the technical requirements. So each of the entities should be well represented in reviewing the technical requirements along with the rest of the RFP documents.
Mayor?
John, do the compliance points, do they have a relative, maybe 100% correlation to the actual costs of what it would have done if, say it was, they didn't do the seeding, so that there's a good correlation and a good need to have to do it versus just getting out of it? Do you know what I mean? So is there like 100% or a percentage? How are you coming up with compliance costs related to each item?
Well, we're still developing the full compliance table. In the first draft that goes out, we're not going to populate the table, but the significance of the non-compliance point will be assigned a value. So for instance, if it's something significant, it would have a higher value than something simply like failing to file a report. Failing to file a report may be deemed a non-compliance point, but they're allowed to cure that. But if there is more significant action, they have a safety violation, they drive over adjoining landowner's property and cause some damage, that has a more significant event. So the short answer is yes. The more severe the event, the higher the non-compliance regime would impose a non-compliance upon them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I would ask the board for direction on basically the resolution is what we're looking at here to approve.
Chairman, I'm looking
Yes.
at some of the longevity on this board, and I think somebody who's put a lot of hard work should be able the honor to make this motion.
So moved.
There you go. Thank you,
We
Nancy.
were all waiting for you, you know that.
You want somebody with longevity to second it too?
Sure.
I'm second the motion.
Thank you. This is certainly a huge milestone in beginning the process, and kind of similar to what the Corps did quite a number of months ago and leading toward the award of the bid. So this, we've got a long ways to go with our P3 consortium, but we need to get started with this. Before we vote on it, I just want to thank John for the work that he's put into this. A lot of meetings, and he's done an excellent job, and that also what's going to be following here, the white paper.
Thank you.
But any other questions or comments? If not, we'll take a roll.
Mr. Vanyo?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Whalen,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Otto,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted, Mr. Olson,
Yes.
And the next one.
Mr. Chair, members of the Diversion Board of Authority, within your packet, you have an appropriations and financing white paper. And I also handed out just a brief red line version of that. There was a few capitalization changes that we had made. And then some other, one other addition was adding in the sales tax projections for Cass County from 2031 to 2084. So pretty minor changes, but I just wanted to show, indicate the red line changes. The appropriations and financing white paper is really the skeleton for the financing, the overall financing of the diversion project itself, both the comprehensive project and also the diversion channel and associated infrastructure. The white paper discusses the appropriations regime for both the state of North Dakota and the state of Minnesota. The white paper does recognize that we still have to resolve some permitting issues with Minnesota before we can count on any money being appropriated from the Minnesota legislature. The white paper then goes on to discuss the sales tax authorizations, the sales tax authorities for both the city of Fargo and Cass County. And it also further discusses the improvement district with respect to the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. And keeping with the objectives that were set forth by this board, the goal of the financing plan is not necessarily to rely upon revenue produced by special assessments, but instead to only use that as a credit enhancement. And so the majority of the financing will be accomplished through sales and use tax bonds, and any improvement bonds that would be issued or payments to the P3 developer would be used with sales and use tax revenues in accordance with the policy direction that had been given by the Diversion Authority. The improvement district would be used as a credit and security, but not counted upon as a revenue source. And that's been the goal of the finance plan. Long-term, this sets forth the skeleton. We are now starting work on the actual structuring of the different bond transactions that we would anticipate issuing over the course of the next 6 years. Sort of from an analogy, now we'll be adding muscle onto the skeleton. We'll know we're working with CH2M with respect to their projected spending, and also working with Kent and Mike and Ernst & Young and Springstead to develop when we should issue debt, how much debt should be issued, and in what years. And you'll see more reporting on that coming out within the next 2 to 3 months. We'll make some presentations to the Finance Committee. I would, from the finance plan perspective, that has some flexibility built into it, depending upon timing of bond issuance, depending upon when money is needed. The white paper on appropriations and financing is more of just the legal authorities. It's not a binding agreement between anybody, but it does set forth how we plan on funding the project and what our legal authorizations are for the project. I can certainly answer any questions you might have about the white paper. It has been vetted with the technical people from CH2M. It has been vetted with Ernst & Young, Springstead, along with our own finance people, Kent and Mike. And it was approved by the Finance Committee yesterday. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about it.
Kevin?
Thank you. John, on page 9 of the red line version, it talks about appropriations from the city of Moorhead, not to exceed $100 million. And of course, that's all through the legislative process in Minnesota. Does that number correspond to the dollar number that we had in the project partnership agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, everything is, and that's a number not to exceed $100 million, but it is at the level that was predetermined according to the record of decision by Minnesota DNR, which currently equates to about $43 million.
Yeah, that's what made me ask the question, because we also have another document here that shows the $43 million. But I certainly am okay with the language saying not to exceed. I think that's fine. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so we would basically need a motion to approve this as going along with the RFP, so that those receiving it understand their financial
Also move.
appropriations. Roger?
Second.
And a second. Anything further? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes?
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Otto? Yes. Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Thank you, John. Do you have the next one as well?
Yes, the item 5C is an informational item. We are and a little bit of background is in order. I'm currently working with the various townships along the diversion channel alignment. There are several transportation needs that need to be addressed with respect to each of the townships, such as rerouting local township roads, closing township roads, addressing transportation needs, bridges, et cetera. Really the nuts and bolts of how you put a diversion channel through each of the townships. Along with that, as you know, the diversion channel will run through the city of West Fargo's ET area. And I had an opportunity to meet with some of the officials from West Fargo, and it's likely appropriate that we should also enter into an MOU with the city of West Fargo. The MOU would address the transportation needs of the city of West Fargo moving forward, so that just like with the townships, we had discussed that there should be a technical group from the Diversion Authority and a technical group from the city that would work together really to discuss the installation of bridges on 32nd Avenue and 52nd Avenue that would cross the diversion channel, along with putting in some type of casing, and I'm not an engineer, so I apologize, I probably have the terminology wrong, but it would be some type of casing that would go underneath the channel, so that in the future, as West Fargo grew, it could push its utilities, its water and sewer utilities through that casing without disturbing the IDF levee, and also it would be much cheaper at this time to install it during construction, cap each end of the casing, and then at a later date, they can just push the utilities through. Not being an engineer, I don't know where those precise locations should be, but you'd certainly want to have the two technical teams meet and discuss that. The other would be to address how drainage issues work in the area. That's another technical issue. The diversion channel will be going through certain areas. How does storm sewer drainage work? How does that connect up to the diversion channel? And local drainage, so that's another technical working group. And then the final was a question by West Fargo whether or not, under the P3 contract, each of the 4 shortlisted teams have the opportunity to look at and evaluate any types of alignment changes that may be warranted based upon technical data. And that is included within the RFP, that each of the teams will be looking at that, and they can certainly make suggestions regarding that. But once again, that's due to technical reasons, has to all be in compliance with the EIS and EA. And so all within the appropriate law, but that's in concept. The city of West Fargo is here. We didn't really envision that we would have any type of agreement before you today, but more of a get your board's input, see if you feel that it was appropriate to move forward with an MOU. Given that we're working with the townships on an MOU, it probably makes sense to also have an MOU with the city of West Fargo.
Okay. Mike, you have any comments? Or?
No, I think, I concur with what John says. Obviously, the P3 process now is in full force and moving ahead, and I think it'd be a good time to evaluate where we're at. This is I guess in my terms, a forever project once it's done. It's not, it's going to be very tough to do anything with the changes or anything thereafter, so we should look at it and try to get done as right as possible, from the get-go, so. I know Mayor Madron's here, and so is our city engineer, Kevin Buckles. If anyone has any further questions, they're probably a little more qualified to answer more technical stuff than I would be, so.
Welcome, Mayor. So as I see it, this is more bringing it awareness because of the P3 that's going out, and so that those firms know that they may be addressing some of these issues, and we will then formulate that MOU down the road here. And then anything that would come of this obviously would have its typical reviews and escalate through the process, so.
Correct. And just on that same line, it'll be the same as any of the MOUs that we're currently undertaking with the
Right.
townships. Once they're finalized, they'll come up through the appropriate boards to this board for final approval, and you'll start seeing a steady flow of MOUs with different third parties coming through in early 2017. One of the workflows that I've been working on quite extensively are the agreements with the utilities that cross the diversion channel, the townships, North Dakota DOT, the railroads. So we have a whole series of, I think there's about 35 agreements altogether that will be making their way through the process now. And thus far, it's been really work at the technical level to make sure that we have the technical requirements of running a utility conduit underneath the diversion channel, making sure that we've identified the proper easements and having the appropriate legal language. But we're at the point now, you'll start seeing a lot of those agreements working their way through the process for approval at this board.
Any questions? This was just informational, so, sound good?
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I take a step back here a little bit? This reminded me of something else, and maybe while Terry's here, it brings me to some questions regarding the, I know you're in the process of the southern embankment alignment and design. And I know I serve in our highway tracking committee in Clay County, and there's a lot of issues that we're dealing with in terms of future road issues. And at what point in time are we going to have some dialogue with the Corps and that design that assures us that some of our traffic patterns that we want to see happen will be okay? Sorry to go back.
Yeah. Fine.
We can start having dialogue at any time. What we can do is, once we get the alignment set on paper, which should be in the next couple months,
Okay.
we can start having that dialogue with Clay County, highways and the commission.
Okay. Very good. Thank you,
Okay.
Terry.
Okay. Moving on to public outreach.
We'll have a brief outreach report today. Last week, we presented at the State Water Convention and had a great presentation. I was not there, but Eric and Jason and who else there? Okay, we're out there and they had a great presentation. And even though the crowd was down, the people that were there really accepted or really received the information and seemed very engaged in the presentation. New legislators and council members on both sides of the river are going to have an opportunity to receive information about the diversion, where it's at, where it's come from, and bringing them up to speed. North Dakota be on Monday, 19th, and the Minnesota new legislators and council members. Is there a date set for that one yet?
Tentatively, I think it's the 12th.
Morning, or good afternoon. The meeting with new Moorhead council members, I understand Mayor Williams has arranged for this on January 12th, and I understand that's more of a private group meeting with just the new legislators, so looking forward to meeting with that, and I believe that'll be probably a small group. The meeting on Monday is with Cass County legislators, and we have a group RSVP'd to attend Monday noon at the Holiday Inn.
Thanks, Eric. And the website continues to see nice traffic. All of our social media, which includes Twitter, receives good hits on it and continues to increase in the amount of activity there. And the Business Leaders Task Force, I don't think there's anybody here today, but she was at our meeting yesterday and said that it's been pretty quiet since the sales tax vote. But again, I want to compliment the business leaders on their effort for the sales tax vote and their ability to get the information out there and in a way that was received and understood. So we, again, want to thank them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Land management, Chad, are you going to handle that?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we had a meeting on Wednesday. I actually chaired it as Commissioner Sterling was out in Bismarck representing Cass County with the Association of Counties. So we had a pretty good meeting. I think that it was reasonably brief, but we went through a lot of things. And one of the most important things we went through, and actually have the, I don't know if you had a chance to review the packet or had an opportunity to get it via email. If not, one of the things that was in my, and we've seen some of these before, but one of the things that's most prudent to me is the one-page handouts. And the project scale, this is what I've said since I was elected, the project scale is so large, it's hard for anyone to grasp within a couple seconds. So I've really enjoyed these sheets we compiled. What they are is essentially one-pagers that are involve generic things about the FM diversion project. We have farm impact mitigation sheet, and one of the most important things we have there is this actual impact map, and it lets everyone know in a glance exactly what the diversion, should it be active, actually do. And it shows the folks at large that, I guess my phrase has been, Daryl heard me say this prior, is the perception is that we're going to be unleashing Armageddon every time spring happens. Every time spring happens, we're going to have 500 feet of water to the south of town. Well, the fact of the matter is no. In fact, most of the time, we'll have the flooding take place where the flooding is going to take place anyway. Beyond that, in stages, and they've graphed everything out, 25-year, 50-year, 100-year, showing people, again, within a glance, within 5 seconds, of letting people know exactly what this diversion will do if it is utilized. I think that's incredibly handy. We also have impacts and benefits for the state of Minnesota. We have impacts regarding organic farmland. And I think what this will be the most handy for is it really is compressed information that we can hand to our state legislators. We've got a lot of friends, and I'm not really paying attention to politics in Minnesota, so I don't know how many people were elected newly to represent this region in St. Paul, but I know in the Fargo-Moorhead area, as well as areas up in Grand Forks, we have a lot of new faces that will be in Bismarck. This will be imperative that we get to them. And I'll be active in the legislature. I think Mr. Grinberg said he will as well. I know Mr. Banyol will be out there. These are the little handouts I want to have handy. And when we go and talk to our friends, it's much easier to talk to our friends than folks we don't know. So if people on these committees know someone in Bismarck that's new or have had a long-term relationship with them, getting this information to them is extremely important. So if they are called on to defend our project, they have, again, information that's easily obtainable. Other items we went through was the process, and maybe Mr. Dodds can talk to this better than I, but the process of assessing what our values will be for easements regarding water. And I'm just going to yield the floor to you, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Love to tell you that I could tell you as clean a story as he, but I'm sure I cannot.
That's a hell of a setup. I don't know.
I do my best.
Yeah, we've been working towards valuing flowage easements for a number of months now. That was a goal that Chairman Vanyo had in 2016. And several months ago, the Cass County Water Board did retain a specialty appraiser who's been working to do a little bit of literature review across the country to find examples of flowage easements similar to what we have here. He has found some examples and starting to research those in a bit more in depth. And then we are working down a path of what we called paired sales. And the idea with this paired sales approach is we know there's areas in our geography that flood today and that have flooded over time. And so our goal is to try to find sales data of farmlands that have sold in areas where there was a flood impact, and then a comparable sale adjacent to it where maybe there was not a flood impact, and try to draw some conclusions from those two sales. And hopefully we'll find a good database where we're able to draw enough conclusions from those paired sales, starting with more of a broader reach in our data gathering efforts, and then hopefully we'll be able to refine that down. So we are reaching out to some local groups to try to gather some data from them, and I guess we're optimistic about that process, although I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few bumps along the way.
Thank you, sir. One other item we were given detail on was the Drayton Dam, and I'm not sure, I hesitate to call it a dam, I know it is. But we were given a lot more detail on the important part of that. If we were to note something, I would say that the folks up in the Drayton area are very receptive to the modifications we want to do, and I think that's important to note that we have people who are impacting far, far, far downstream that are actually understanding and receptive to what we're up to. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, if anybody has any questions.
Question, so the Drayton people were a little concerned about the FEMA rules were caused by us, and we really had nothing to do with that, but their diking is an issue. Was that addressed as all?
I don't know what the diking was. I actually have a wonderful handout, too, that shows the modifications we'll be doing to the river. I don't know if it's going to be sheet piling. I don't know the specifics of the design. But what we're doing is taking a situation that creates basically what is a straight line dam. And it looks like we're putting it into steps so our fish can migrate more happily.
Yeah, we had a brief meeting with Pembina County Water District on Tuesday. A few of us from the Cass County Water Board and others went up there, including a representative from the DNR and from the Corps. And it really was the focus to just have a preliminary discussion with the water district up in Cavalier County, Pembina County, that controls that area around Drayton, and engage with them in a brief discussion. We will need to be getting some land rights, and we wanted to sort of start a sort of outreach effort before we started approaching those property owners. It was a good, constructive meeting. There'll be some follow-up work, but generally speaking, they're supportive of the project. And we're willing to cooperate with the Cass County Water District. We did not get into details regarding FEMA floodplain issues with the group that we met.
Well, they were concerned at one time we were putting more water to them, which we really are not, and had some old data on that, but I'm encouraged that they probably have a better understanding of what's going on.
Any more questions, Mr. Chairman? If not, that's all I have, sir.
Thank you for the report. Finance? Tony?
I'll save a couple comments for the end, but I'll ask Randy to come up and address 8G.
One day I'm going to learn how to do this very cleanly for the board, so if you, that's my goal for 2017, actually. Here we go. Well, recommended contracting actions. I'm going to have Ty talk about a couple that require board action, but a couple that I just want to give you some information on that were co-executive director approved task order amendments. We have one for HMG for 124,942, and this is to extend their services specifically for providing H&H support to the Southern Embankment design. So this extends the length of their contract and adds that budget in order to do that particular work for the Southern Embankment. Also for Beaver Creek Archaeology, extended their contract with no budget increase there. There are also two for CH2M. We had originally planned on bringing to the board at this meeting a new contract and a new task order for CH2M to get into the next 16 or so months of work, particularly the procurement of the P3 contractor. Those negotiations drug on a little bit longer than we had hoped, and so we will be presenting that request for a new contract and task order in January. In the meantime, the Finance Committee has looked at a one-month extension along with executive directors and the others. And so what we'll be doing between now and January 13th is simply extending the CH2M contract for the same terms and conditions as under now for 2 task orders. One is the general program management services, and the other one is for the construction management services. So just, that's for your information. And then Ty, if you will come and talk about the construction change orders.
Good afternoon. There are 3 construction contract change orders for board action today. These went through the Finance Committee meeting yesterday, and so I will limit my normal rambling level of detail that I present to the board for these. Today, I'll just give an overview, and if there are any more questions, please do ask. First change orders for work package 42F1N, which is the north 2nd Street flood wall. Total is $127,282.10. That is 2 components. One is for temporary striping, a little over $6,000. And that temporary striping is required because the railroad permit delay, which was external to the project, that earlier, we had done a change order earlier that pushed out the substantial completion date. That delay prevented the permanent striping, and now, well, that delay got the permanent striping timeline into cold weather that's inappropriate to do that striping. So this is temporary striping to get the project through the winter. And then the other $121,000 is quantity balancing. So many of the cost line items for this project are unit rate, which means rather than a lump sum, it's an estimated quantity at bid time and then a proposed unit rate. And then the actual project, the project will then be paid for what is actually required for gravel or rebar or volume of concrete and such. So that $121,000 has already been paid to the contractor through monthly inspection and quantity verification and the normal invoice process. So the reason for doing it in a change order now is to essentially balance the books and make sure that the final contract price reflects what's actually been paid to the contractor. On work package 42F1S, which is the south 2nd Street floodwall project, there are 2 items for that as well. One is an addition for the gate at the 2nd Street pump station. This is one that's been before the board a couple times as a change order to the 42A2 pump station project. Eventually, what we did was we deleted that scope from the pump station project, and now we're adding it to this project. The reason for that, it's the same contractor, and this way we can close the pump station project. This project before you is staying open over the winter. That gate takes time to manufacture, so just purely for an administrative reason, we're letting the pump station project close. We're moving the scope over to this one. So it's an addition of that known scope. And then there's a very large deduct for the same quantity balancing that I just described for the other project. So the net is $416,000 deducted from the contract price. And then finally, work package 42F2, which is the flood wall and levee at the former Park East Department site. Very small, sort of an odd job. Originally, there was a street light base that was originally outside of the project limits. Project activities ended up impacting that base. It ended up making something of a trip hazard in the existing sidewalk. So the project team decided for public safety reasons it was best to take it out. So we asked the contractor to remove that at their cost of $650. So like I said, these have already been reviewed and approved in detail by the Finance Committee. If there are any additional questions, then I'll be happy to answer them. If not, then this would be for board action to approve today, please.
Any questions on those change orders?
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further questions? If not, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Okay, before I give it back to Tony, John, I'm going to ask you a question because Randy had put up two that were approved by the co-executive directors prior to this. I don't know if you can back it up, Randy, to show. Okay. I just want to make sure with our new process here, you know, that Mike and I approve this, and that it doesn't go through finance, right? Or,
Correct. For something like this, it would not normally go.
okay, so, and I'm kind of wondering what section that was that allowed that amount of money to go through, because I thought that I know that was under contracting, that it was 10,000.
Yeah, this is just a task order extension. This would be different than a contracting action. This is, and it's not a change order, this is a task order amendment. If you'd like, at the
So,
next meeting,
yeah,
I can
so
go over
I
it.
just want to,
Yeah.
it's kind of, I want to make sure that we're doing this correctly.
It's hard being administrator. Mike does it all the time, 120 grand, what the heck, huh?
So anyway, that answered that. Then, Randy also mentioned extension here, and if you would take a look at this document here with CH2M, I just want to indicate to you that we do need to take action on that one. We are in the process of looking at change with our, basically, rather than the flat lump sum per month, going to time and expense in the future, but we didn't get all of that ironed out so that we could pick up on that. And what this is doing is extending our current contract for one more month, or task order, excuse me. And I would like, the Finance Committee did approve this, and you see that it basically is for two of these, the continuance. The back page and the front page are the dollar amounts. And by next month, we hope to have before you the new task order amounts. So this is an extension for 1 month. Any questions on that? And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further comments or questions? If not, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney? Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Turn it back to you, Tony.
John, you cover 8C, please?
Mr. Chair, members of the Diversion Authority, item 8C is an extension of work for Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young is providing the financial advice regarding the P3, the procurement, and other matters related. When I was discussing this with them, I asked them to provide an estimate that was on the high side or conservative side. They don't believe that they will expend this much on their budget. However, I asked that they provide a budget that they could stay within and be conservative. One of the changes to their contract that I would highlight, consistent with the direction that the Finance Committee has given, any of the travel expenses or invoices have to be consistent with the IRS requirements. So any of the travel that they come into Fargo has to be at coach class rates, and any of the hotel stays have to be at hotel's rate for North Dakota. And thus, if they stay at a hotel that's more expensive, Ernst & Young will not bill us for that. So it's extending their current services. One of the questions that came up at the Finance Committee did this amount include their support services during the procurement, such as analyzing the financial proposals of each of the 4 shortlisted teams? And yes, it does. That's all inclusive. When each of the four shortlisted teams submit their financial proposal, it'll include an extensive amount of detail, and they'll be available to assist in digging into the numbers and making sure that the numbers are credible and supported by the financial proposal that they put forth. And so this is all inclusive of those costs. And this was approved by the Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add some of the discussion we had yesterday, a year from now, these type of fees are going to take a steep decline into, no longer being required for these type of services. This will be the next venture.
Any questions about this? Entertain a motion to,
Move for approval.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Anything further? Not, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney? Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Otto? Yes. Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Your approval.
Mr. Chairman, item 8D, then, Finance Committee yesterday did approve just a tad over $2.3 million for requested bills to pay through December 7th. Everything's in accord, looking proper, so answer any questions you might have, but if not, I would move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Comments? Not, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney? Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Otto? Yes. Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Olson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just add, from yesterday's conclusion of this year's Finance Committee work, piggyback a little bit what Mr. Peterson said with the information, and at least from, I think I can speak for the whole Finance Committee, where, at least when I started and where we're at today, there's a whole new set of documents, transparency, clear picture from a budget perspective where we're at. I compliment all the folks that have worked hard, the program managers, CH2M, A2S, Army Corps of Engineers, Mr. Shockley, the whole slew of folks that have put a lot of work into this to get us to this point in time. I think the Finance Committee, whether it's approving change orders to monitoring budgets, working on behalf of the Finance Committee for the Diversion Authority, feel really good at where we're at as we close out the year, and just compliment everybody for their hard work.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership on this, Tony. It's nice to have the reports and the detail level that any person could possibly want. So I think it's set up well for moving forward. So thank you. Concludes your report.
Yes.
Move into the last item. Before I do that, I should point out, you have this. It's a list of accomplishments that at the beginning of the year I had set goals, and you have before you kind of a summary of where things are at.
And as Senator Hoven noticed, a fine picture of you, Mr. Vaniel.
Yeah. Mayor Mahoney will be putting forth 2017 goals shortly. With that, we have kind of a bittersweet moment here with one of our longest-term members departing us. And Nancy, again, want to thank you for all the leadership you've provided, the work that you've done over the years. You've been a real strong supporter, and we're going to miss you. So I would ask if you have any words.
I certainly do. I very much appreciated all the efforts that have gone into the diversion thus far. All of us here know what a struggle and what an extremely stressful, scary time it was in all our previous flood fights. And I'm very proud of the fact that we successfully fought those fights, but we all know that we couldn't keep it up. And so for us to go from sandbagging by the millions upon millions, that to a point where we have hope that we can do something to really enhance the safety for our citizens and our property. I just really need to acknowledge the service of everyone here. It's a team effort, not only for those here, but for all of those that are the staff. I mean, it's a huge lift for everyone. And I brought some Moorhead pins. They're lapel pins. And what I'd like to ask you to do, when you are visiting with legislators, I would very much appreciate it if you're wearing your county or your city pin, if you put the Moorhead pin on right next to it, to just acknowledge that we are partners. We are partners in this. We have been from the beginning. And my fervent hope and prayer is that it will continue to be a partnership. So I just so much appreciate every one of you and every one of your efforts. I'll continue to track it. I'll be certainly one of the people clicking into the website frequently. So I just want to express that appreciation, and very, very happy to have served with every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, I want to comment. I worked with Nancy on floods since 1997. And every place I went, whether it was in a garage where they were doing sandbags, or whether it was on the streets of Moorhead Country Club, or even in Oakport, this woman was there, showing her concern and willing to fight the fight. And after the flood of 2009, we got together as the counties and the two cities. I remember the meeting was across the street at the Radisson. And we made a decision at that point in time that we were going to work together to come up with a permanent solution to this. And I remember our motto was, doing nothing is not an option. And this woman has made sure that nothing was not an option. Nancy, I think you can be proud of all the work that's been done throughout your boundaries, your city limits of Moorhead, the work that you and your council did with the legislature to do that work, and then your concern for even the outlying areas of Clay County. You have been a true champion of permanent flood protection, not only for Moorhead and Clay County, but for this region, and we all thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mayor Williams, before you speak, I'd like to thank you for having the wisdom to keep Nancy on certainly when you came in as mayor, you had your options before you to, and I think the experience that Nancy carried with was invaluable, and so thank you. Go ahead.
It never occurred to me to take Nancy off. In fact, I was one of them that was a little surprised because I thought she would want to see this fall through a little bit more. So I was a little surprised when you decided not to run for re-election. But we at the city of Moorhead, we've done some degree of our goodbyes, and in fact, I presented Nancy with a print of a painting that was done of the Red River, because she has been sort of that beacon for Moorhead, and when that our work is done, I'll always think of Nancy for that. Whether you're involved in it in voting at city council or not, you will be always in my head, And I really appreciate the work that you've done. You've always given us excellent reports every time we always have, for those that don't know, we always have a mayor and council reports of which people can update. And Nancy always gives us very meticulous notes about what's happening. So whether or not we're at a meeting or reading the material, that group feels pretty involved, and that will be because of Nancy. And whoever I appoint next will have really huge shoes to fill. I really appreciate it. And so thank you again, Nancy, for, and you should probably hear the list of things that have happened in 17 years since this woman has come on Moorhead. It is amazing. And, but this is just one of them, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Nancy.
Well, thank you, and I just want to end with, keep up the good work, everybody. I want to hear and read good things, and I just know you will. I know you will not let our community down, not for a moment. And I want to thank you and urge you to continue your own excellent service. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Okay. Also, kind of a noteworthy event, I get to step back. This is my last meeting as chair, and so I certainly wish the mayor all the best in taking the reins come January. So it'll be different, but I know we're in good hands, and I think it's a good thing that, you know, with the JPA that we signed, that I think we did a lot of really good things with that document, and it's good. Change is good. So.
Well, Darrell, we want to thank you as a board because you've done excellent work. And I remember we started in 2009. None of us imagined a meeting every month for all those times, and meetings twice a month, and meetings and meetings. But you've done very well to represent the community, and in our Washington trips did excellent in talking to our congressional delegations and the people we had to run into. I feel a little bit different now because it appears to me you're like the undercover boss. You're going backwards in a sense, and administrator for the
Mr. Mayor, he's going forward.
but I hope to get some good reports on Mike and Bruce, but we'll see how that works out. But you'll be very actively involved, I know that. And Delray and I want to thank, when we went down to talk to the DNR, we thought that meeting went very well. And your passion for this project, we actually got a bid, and we're moving. We're going to be moving forward. So I think Denny and I at one time talked and thought we would not be this point until 2020. So I would say you've done an admirable job as our chairman to get us to this point and where we're going. And as Nancy would say too, is I think we're on our way. And for a long time, we weren't really sure that was going to happen. Tax vote passed. That was a big hurdle that we've had. And I think you're on the verge of seeing wonderful things going forward. So thank you for all your hard work and your passion. And I only hope we can learn to appreciate wine as much as you do in California. So.
Okay, anything else? If not, you see the next meeting, and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Good work.